Friday, very strong day for the market. Raced the majority of a big down move from 298 to 285. We closed right at the breakout area. So if we zoom out over the last couple months, we had this trouble going back from the beginning of August all the way to the gap up on following Labor Day. We filled that gap on the down move. 294 is the level, slightly above that. And so now that that's been filled, buyers seem like they're back in control, or are back in control. I'm not going to be thinking about pullback with any sort of size, unless we get a little bit more extended to the upside, or we start to hold below 293 and get 293 and get some sort of negative catalyst. We have the Chinese in town this week for trade talks. So there could be some headlines either way there. I think that's the best shot at seeing some sort of market impact, unless there's some totally unexpected major news. Next week earnings season starts. So last week, considering the light news flow, ended up being a little bit more eventful than you would have expected. Hard down, and then the balance, and then came in. The jobs number was fine, showing growth still, but no inflationary pressure, which is what the market wanted. All right, so yeah. So just on the prices, remember, so 293 is the spot. That's where we consolidated really tight before the final up move into the close on Friday. So that's where you'd look for buyers to step in if we get a little bit more selling pressure this morning, or any type of quick move on the open where there's buying and we're hold above 94. We would then watch for further upside. Just zooming back out into 295 would be the first spot to look for some upside. So IWM still very weak, but it did play a little bit of catch up right at the end of the day yesterday. But if you zoom out, you can just see how weak it is in terms of, like, here's the downtrend. If we grab the downtrend line from the recent high, it hasn't even touched that. Whereas, I mean, just if you look at that compared to spit it out, signal. The SPYs look just a lot better to me. So let's see here. So the morning high yesterday, 148.5, 148. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit interesting. So they flushed it. They flushed in the morning on Friday, and then once it started to hold 48, it actually had a decent up move. So I'm sure once it reclaimed 140 and then held here the second time, that encouraged some people to get in. You get a little extension into the close. So yeah, 148.20 to 148. Let's see if buyers step up a little bit higher. So I think RNG is probably going to be a little bit too hard for everyone to trade, but yeah, it was very strong on the AVYA news from Friday. Let's get into FSLR. So FSLR, it's actually kind of pretty strong up move off the recent lows. So let's see here. Going back to January, so beginning of the year was in the low 40s. They ran it all the way up. It looked a couple of times like it was going to break out, but failed in the high 60s. Especially this one right here, actually broke to the downside. But this tariff relief situation now puts it back inside of this range. In 68, it's not getting to 68 probably today or tomorrow, but it's worth keeping an eye on If it starts to consolidate again, I would say even above, where is it right now, 62? If it can start to consolidate, you know, even in this area here for this week. Okay, so if it consolidate between 62 and 64 for the next few days, maybe you can play for the move back into this, and if you capture that, maybe you're in a position for it to actually break to the upside. So let's zoom in. So it sold off, the market sell off on 68 all the way to 56. It was already, yeah, I mean, I think this morning, right now it's bid 62. That if it can start to hold above 62, that's going to be your, what I put on the sheet? I put 62 as S1. So they definitely could flush it below there on the open, but if it flushes below and it reclaims and starts to hold above, then you can start to think about it working up to the first, to R1. Best case scenario, if people really buy today, would be R2, I think. I put R3 on there just for longer, bigger picture. XENT is a thin stock normally wouldn't talk about, but catalyst today, it has shown the ability to trade a couple million shares, strong catalyst. The thing that caught my attention a little bit, I'm not sure if this is company PR or not, but they missed their primary endpoint. But they had some positive statistics on couple of secondary endpoints, and the stock is already beaten down. It already came off like on this gap down here back in May to 30, and then they cut it in half. So I'm wondering if this is kind of actually a gap down by the news scenario. So, and if it is, very quickly you could see it back up in this 15 to 16 area. And the good thing about, since this is normally a thinner stock, you should be able to identify buyers and sellers pretty easily on the tape because it's not going to be crazy volume. At the same time, even though it's a lower price stock because of the thinness, you know, lower price stock, this normally you think the risk would be 5-10 cents, but it's most likely going to be a little bit more on this one. So what do I have here? 12.01, 13.80. So I think the first thing is, I mean, the best scenario would be like quick flush on the open. It catches a bid into, it's already above here. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So it did 13,000 shares here. It's already down 270. So maybe it doesn't even, what do I have for S1? 1380? Okay. I would look for buyers like right here on the open. See some buy with the buyers, and then see if quickly, what you want as best case scenario is it just within 10-15 minutes to be back, at least test above 15, make a higher low and something like that. And that would be the low is in. So what is that? So I don't have this question from Joseph. That's sort of thing to put in, not here. Questions for them related to the morning. It's just a distraction. Put it in the chat. So GM. Right. So anything that's on the morning game plan sheet, I will talk about. So you don't have to put it in there either. Monday. So AVYA, we had a strong catalyst on Friday. Ended up being very strong. Signed that contract with RNG. It spent most of the day just consolidating midday after initial pop on the open, being accumulated 1260, and closed at the high. It looked like it was gapping up this morning. It was, and it's coming off a little bit now. So what I'd be looking for is just, you know, does it hold above Friday's high, 1320? If it does, what do we have for upside? 14. So there's upside. I mean, it was already touched up here earlier. I'm not sure if it caught an upgrade. It's that what caused that to happen. JP Morgan obviously upgraded ring. So Morgan Stanley upgraded. So yeah, Morgan Stanley said 16 for AVYA. They are buying back 45% of their stock, which obviously creates huge supply-demand imbalance. So that is that. Costco. So on the open, it had a very big flush. Other people were clearly thinking the same thing as I was in terms of could have a nice down move. But after that initial flush from 289 on the open, which was a $5 flush, it came back and it was still okay. Like after this type of flush, it's okay for it to pop back up to 286. But then after this consolidation, you want to see a break to the downside, not to the upside. So once this happened here, you didn't necessarily want to get long because it obviously came right into the morning high and failed there. But once it came in, made the higher low here to where it broke out from, and then came up, it then in this area right here shifted into long mode. And they were selling it, I guess, into 292 a few times here. But it's basically 290 by 292. And if it starts to hold outside of that area, I would use that as to inform my bias. Hewlett Packard, sellers in control. Okay, let's see. So yeah, I think we had a negative bias on this one. In fact, from the pre-market, I thought it was a short even from the pre-market. But then once it gets below 17 on the open and shows this weakness, I'm assuming everyone shorted it in the pop back up to 17 here. Didn't exactly collapse, but this stock doesn't have a huge ATR, but this is a 1 ATR move here. That's not bad. Okay, so Jeff was saying it was a quick spike there, failed, and then the seller, you could see him here at 1680, so it became pretty clean trade. It did attempt to bounce here, I guess, got almost back to 1680. So just looking at it from based on Friday's action, I would say that if it got above 1670 today, and actually started to hold in this area and then broke to the upside, it could actually bounce. But certainly was a good short on Friday. Apple is just back up to the area where we dumped the long, tried to short it about a week ago. Right back up, $10 off the low. Let's see here. I mean, what I'd like to see in this really is, I think I probably said this a couple of days ago, is just kind of consolidate above like 224 now for a few, like, or next 3 days, let's say. And if you do that, it sets it up for a real easier break to the upside or downside, but it seems like it's setting up to break to the upside. Yeah. And then I put Uber on the sheet here. It caught an upgrade today. I've really liked this on the short side for a long time, but I feel like it's now, like, it flushed below $30. It's back above $30. It's like, if you zoom out, if you go to the last earnings where it's set up for a really good short, it was up here in the low 40s. So that was another 25, 30% down move from there. And so I could definitely see it bouncing back up to 34, 35. And so that's kind of why I put it on there. Just looking at it the last few days, it hit the 2860s 3 times. They bought it there, it bounced. They flushed it below there, it bounced. And then I guess people realized they were buying it there. So on Thursday, they bought it there twice. And then they made a higher low here. So it actually does look like it's starting to kind of form a bottom. I think just looking at the markup from a while ago in it, if it gets bought today, you can easily see it getting it back up to this 32, 32 and a half. And then if people really buy it over this week, maybe it bounces even a little bit more. Sellers have obviously been in control since, going all the way back to when it took out the IPO price. It had one day above the IPO price here, and then after that, it was just pretty much a short, like, hard down move, came back to the breakdown price right there, and then they made a new low. So doesn't mean it can't bounce like back up to here. And obviously this one here is a good example. Like, it went from 45, that's the IPO price, down to 38. They bounced it back up to where it broke down from 43. It's like $5 bounce, and they crushed it again. So, but at a minimum, back into this area here. See that? So that's that. Yeah, SPWR, same thing as FSLR in terms of the tariff news. So yeah, above 11.15, $12. Yeah, Roku. So yeah, I mean, like Walmart is the largest retailer in the country, right? So if they're gonna do a product with Roku, that's good distribution for them. But ultimately, the way they make their money is not on the product sales; it's on the advertising channel. So people need to. That's kind of why it sold off. So, but yeah, Catalyst there failed, I guess, 109 Friday morning. The way I would look at this is first attempt failed here, came off hard. What I'd want to see is maybe like a higher low, 106, 107, 106.50, something like that. Here. And I think it could have some trouble at 110. So something like that, this area here. In MU, yeah, MU. So MU already bounced. To me, that's a sufficient bounce in it. It seems like it could be a nice short at that area right there. So it's on day one, it sold off to 43.70. It popped back up to 44.70. And so if we zoom in on it, you can see that was the high into the close, right there. That's where it failed. So I think it's a tough long up here. I'd want to see it take this area out and consolidate up here for more than an hour and then break to the upside above 45. Before I thought considered on the long side up here. I'd rather fade it. Yeah, I think 30. That's a good question by Joe on what would be an interesting. I don't know what you mean by it. Oh, selling it as a hedge. Yeah, I think so. I don't know if you can get it. I doubt you can get anything for it, but probably get about a nickel or a dime for it or something like that. But certainly, if it ran up another dollar, maybe they'd get a little bit juiced. But it would be very hard for. You'd probably have to go out another week in time, maybe to get anything for the 35s. As always, be patient.